Victoria, I can't do this.
Say that again.
I'm sorry, I'm not ready.
Are you coming to tell them yourself, or are you leaving that to me as well?
The morning of her wedding, Victoria Osei woke up at 5:43. Not because of nerves. She had never been a nervous person. She woke up because the light coming through the curtains of the Ritz-Carlton on Peachtree Street had that specific quality of early Atlanta morning in April, pale gold and unhurried. And something in her chest had been quietly awake for hours already, waiting for the rest of her to catch up. She lay still for 4 minutes. She could hear her maid of honor Priya breathing softly on the other side of the suite. She could hear the distant sound of the city beginning its day 14 floors below. She thought about Marcus the way you think about someone you have already decided to trust completely, not with anxiety, but with the settled certainty of a decision already made. She had met Marcus Hale 3 years ago at a rooftop networking event in Buckhead. He had been standing near the bar looking at his phone with the expression of someone who had come to the event out of obligation and was already planning his exit. She had walked past him twice before he looked up. When he did, he said, without introduction, without preamble, "Do you actually enjoy these things, or are you also just here because someone made you feel guilty about not coming?" She had laughed. A real laugh, not a polished one. That was the beginning. He was charming and handsome and came from old Atlanta money. The Hale family had been in commercial real estate for 4 generations, their name on buildings across Midtown and Buckhead. He was 34, confident in the way of someone who had never had to question whether he belonged in a room. He introduced her to his parents at dinner 6 months in. His mother Eleanor wore pearls and a smile that never fully reached her eyes. His father Robert shook Victoria's hand and spent the evening talking to Marcus about a development deal in Sandy Springs, as if Victoria were part of the furniture. Victoria noticed. She filed it quietly and said nothing. She had her own things to build. She had founded her company, Osei Tech, at 27, in a 1-bedroom apartment in Decatur with a laptop, $12,000 in savings, and an idea for a software platform that could streamline supply chain logistics for mid-sized businesses. Her first client had been a furniture distributor in Marietta who took a chance on her because he liked her presentation and liked even more that she was honest about what the software couldn't do yet. She had 3 clients after 6 months, 11 after a year, 43 after 2 years. She had not told Marcus the full details of what Osei Tech was becoming, not because she was hiding anything, because she had learned early that when a woman is building something serious, the moment she talks about it too loudly in certain rooms, the room stops listening to what she is saying and starts deciding what to think about her for saying it. She wore simple clothes to dinners with the Hales. She listened more than she spoke. She was not performing smallness. She was protecting something that was not yet ready to be seen. Marcus proposed on a Tuesday evening in November at Nikolai's roof, the white tablecloths and the city spread below them. The ring was beautiful, a round solitaire, platinum band. Exactly what she would have chosen. She said yes with the certainty of someone who has thought carefully and arrived at a conclusion they believe in. The wedding was planned for April. 300 guests. The ceremony at Peachtree Presbyterian, the reception at the Ritz. Eleanor Hale had opinions about the flowers and the seating chart and the font on the invitations, and Victoria had accommodated most of them with the calm efficiency of someone who understood that some battles are not worth the cost of winning them. She had one request. She wanted her mother to be seated at the front left, directly across from the Hale family. Her mother, Grace, had raised Victoria alone after her father left when Victoria was 9. Grace had worked double shifts at Piedmont Hospital for 11 years so Victoria could go to Georgia Tech without loans. She had driven 3 hours to every pitch competition Victoria had entered. She had never once told Victoria to aim smaller. Eleanor had suggested, politely, that perhaps Grace might be more comfortable in the second row given the family dynamics of seating arrangements. Victoria had looked at Eleanor Hale with the expression of someone crossing something off a list permanently and said, with complete pleasantness, that her mother would be in the front row. Eleanor had smiled and said of course. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 o'clock. At 12:47, Victoria's phone rang. It was Marcus. She almost didn't answer. She was in the bridal suite, already in her dress. Ivory silk, clean lines, no excess. And Priya was pinning the last of her hair, and her mother was sitting in the corner chair with the expression of someone trying very hard not to cry from happiness. She answered because something in her chest moved the way it moves when you already know. Victoria. His voice was careful, constructed. The voice of someone who has rehearsed what they are about to say and is now discovering that rehearsal was insufficient. Marcus. A pause. 3 seconds. Long enough to contain everything. I can't do this. The room did not change. The light was still the same pale gold. Priya had gone very still behind her. Her mother had looked up. Say that again, Victoria said. Not because she hadn't heard. Because she needed him to say it twice so she would know it was real and not something she could undo with the right response. I'm sorry. I can't. I'm not ready. I thought I was. I've been trying to be ready, and I'm not. A breath. I'm sorry, Victoria. I'm so sorry. She stood in the bridal suite of the Ritz-Carlton in her ivory silk dress with 300 people waiting downstairs and her mother watching her from across the room, and she felt the floor of the future she had built shift beneath her in a way that was not loud at all. Are you coming to tell them yourself? She said. Silence. Marcus, are you coming to tell the 300 people downstairs yourself, or are you leaving that to me as well? Another silence. My father is going to make an announcement. He's all ready. She ended the call. She stood very still for a moment. Then she turned to Priya and said, Take the pins out. I need to be able to move. Priya, who had been her best friend since sophomore year at Georgia Tech and who knew exactly what Victoria's stillness meant, began removing the pins without a word. Her mother crossed the room. She did not say anything. She took Victoria's hand and held it with both of hers. That was all. Victoria looked at herself in the mirror. She looked at the dress. She looked at her own face, composed, clear-eyed, the expression of someone who has taken a blow and is deciding, in real time, what to do next. She thought of 11 things in approximately 40 seconds. Then she thought of one more. She picked up her phone and called her attorney. Downstairs, Robert Hale made a brief announcement to 300 seated guests that the ceremony would not be proceeding due to unforeseen circumstances. He used the word postponed. He did not use the word called off. He did not mention his son by name. He expressed regret on behalf of the family in the tone of someone managing a PR situation rather than a human one. Victoria did not go downstairs. She sat with her mother and Priya in the suite and ordered room service and took off her shoes and did not cry until after midnight. When Priya was asleep and her mother had gone to her own room and the city outside was quiet enough to allow it. She cried for 40 minutes. Then she washed her face. Then she opened her laptop. She had 3 emails from clients. She answered all 3. She did not hear from Marcus directly for 11 days. When his message came, it was long and carefully written and full of the language of self-examination. Phrases like I wasn't in the right place, and I had to be honest with myself, and I hope one day you can understand. She read it once. She did not reply. She moved it to a folder she labeled simply April and did not open it again. His mother called twice. Victoria did not answer. His father did not call at all, which told her everything she had always known about Robert Hale. She went back to work on the Monday after the wedding that didn't happen. She arrived at the Osei Tech offices on West Peachtree at 7:45, which was her normal time. She said good morning to the receptionist and went to her office and closed the door and looked at the Atlanta skyline through her floor-to-ceiling windows for exactly 4 minutes. Then she opened her calendar. She had a pitch meeting that afternoon with a venture capital firm based in San Francisco that had reached out the previous month expressing interest in Osei Tech's Series B round. She had been preparing for this meeting for 6 weeks. She went to the meeting in a gray blazer and white shirt and low heels. She presented for 22 minutes. She answered questions for 38. She left with a term sheet for $8 million. She sat in her car in the parking garage afterward and allowed herself 1 minute of something that was not quite crying and not quite laughing, but existed somewhere between the two. Then she drove back to the office. Osei Tech had 43 employees. Within 18 months of the Series B, it had 112. The platform had expanded beyond supply chain logistics into procurement automation and vendor management systems. 3 Fortune 500 companies had signed enterprise contracts. A profile in Atlanta Business Chronicle ran under the headline The Quiet Revolution: How Victoria Osei Built One of Atlanta's Most Valuable Tech Companies Without Anyone Noticing Until It Was Too Late to Ignore. She framed that headline. She hung it in the hallway outside her office where everyone who came to meet her would pass it on their way in. She did not think about Marcus Hale often. When she did, it was briefly and without the specific pain of loss, more the dull recognition of a thing that had happened and been survived. She had dated twice in the 3 years since. Once a software engineer from Alpharetta who was kind and interesting and ultimately wanted someone with fewer sharp edges. Once a woman she met at a conference in Austin who was brilliant and funny and lived in Singapore, which made things geometrically impossible. She had decided she was not in a rush. She had decided that her life, as it was full enough to not require completion by someone else. This was not bitterness. It was the specific piece of someone who has rebuilt from the foundation and knows exactly what they put in each wall. She was 37 years old. She was the founder and CEO of a company that had just been valued at $400 million in its Series C round. She had an office on the 22nd floor of a building on West Peachtree with her name on the lease and the Atlanta skyline in every window. She had her mother. She had Priya. She had the work. She was, in all the ways that mattered and several that surprised her, exactly where she was supposed to be. The interview was scheduled for 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning in October. Victoria had not personally conducted hiring interviews in 2 years. That was what her VP of People Operations was for. But this was a senior position. Head of Strategic Partnerships, a role that would sit directly below C-suite level and would represent Osei Tech in negotiations with enterprise clients worth hundreds of millions in potential contracts. She had insisted on being in the final interview herself. Her assistant had sent the candidate's resume and portfolio the previous evening. Victoria had read it on her phone while eating dinner alone at her kitchen counter. The candidate had a strong background, 15 years in corporate real estate development, a track record of closing complex multi-party deals, an MBA from Emory. The name at the top of the resume was Marcus Hale. She had set her phone face down on the counter. She had eaten the rest of her dinner. She had washed her plate. She had picked the phone back up and read the resume again from the beginning, carefully, the way she read contracts. Then she had called Priya. Marcus Hale just applied for Head of Strategic Partnerships at Osei Tech. Priya had been silent for 4 seconds. Then, tell me you're going to let him come in. I already confirmed the interview. Another silence. Then Priya said, with the specific satisfaction of someone who believes in justice delivered slowly, wear the burgundy suit. She wore the burgundy suit. She was in the conference room on the 22nd floor at 9:58. The room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Midtown Atlanta. The table was long and dark and serious. She sat at the head of it with a legal pad and a pen and a glass of water and the composed expression of someone who has been in 10,000 rooms and found them all manageable. At 10 o'clock exactly, her assistant showed Marcus Hale in. He had aged well, which she noticed with the detached accuracy of someone taking inventory. He was 40 now. The gray at his temples was new. He wore a well-cut charcoal suit and carried himself with the particular confidence of old Atlanta money, which had always been both his most attractive and most revealing quality. He came around the table toward her with his hand extended and his professional smile fully deployed, and then he saw her face and stopped. 1 full second of stillness. She watched him find her in the features of the woman standing at the head of the conference table. Watched him reassemble, in real time, everything he thought he knew about where Victoria Osei had ended up. She extended her hand. "Mr. Hale, thank you for coming in." His handshake was steady. She gave him credit for that. "Victoria." Then, correcting himself, "Ms. Osei." He stopped. Started again. "I didn't know that this was my company." She gestured to the chair across from her. "Please sit down." He sat. She sat. She opened her legal pad. "Your resume is strong," she said. 15 years in strategic development. The Midtown mixed-use project was particularly impressive. I followed that one in the Chronicle. "Shall we begin?" He looked at her for a moment with an expression she could not fully read and did not try to. Then he said, "Yes, of course." She interviewed him for 50 minutes. She was precise and professional and asked him questions that required real answers. She did not reference the past. She did not make him uncomfortable beyond the ordinary discomfort of being evaluated. She gave him every opportunity to demonstrate what he knew and what he could do. He was good. She had expected he might be, and he was. His answers were thoughtful. His instincts about enterprise relationship management were sound. He asked her 2 questions about Osei Tech's partnership philosophy that were genuinely insightful and told her he had done serious preparation. At the end of the 50 minutes, she thanked him for his time and told him her team would be in touch within the week. He stood. He straightened his jacket. He looked at her with the expression of someone who has something to say and is deciding whether the moment allows it. "Victoria." Not Ms. Osei this time. She looked at him. "I owe you more than an apology." "I know that." "What I did," he stopped. "You deserved better than what I gave you that day. You deserved better than what I gave you for the entire 3 years before it. I've thought about that more than I've told anyone." She held his gaze. She let the silence sit for a moment, the way she had learned to let silences sit in negotiations, long enough to be honest, not so long as to be cruel. "I know you have," she said. "I could see it on your face when you walked in." He nodded slowly. "Marcus." She said his name the way you say the name of something you have set down and do not intend to pick back up. "What you did that day was one of the most painful things that has ever happened to me. I won't pretend otherwise. But it also gave me something." She glanced at the windows. At the skyline. At the 22nd floor of the building with her name on the lease. "It gave me back the time I would have spent becoming someone smaller." He was quiet for a moment. Something moved across his face that was genuine and too late. "The position," he said. "I understand if will be decided on merit," she said. "The same as every other candidate. That's all I can offer you, and it's more than you might expect. I think we both know that." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, quietly, without performance, "You became extraordinary, Victoria." She picked up her pen. She looked down at her legal pad. "I always was," she said. "You just weren't ready to see it." She heard him cross the room. She heard the door open and close with a quiet, final sound. She sat at the head of the long, dark table in her burgundy suit with the Atlanta skyline in every window and her legal pad open in front of her, and she did not move for a moment. Then she drew a single diagonal line across her notes. Closed. She picked up her phone and called her mother. "Mama," she said, when Grace answered on the second ring. "Are you free for lunch?" Her mother said yes. Her mother always said yes. Outside the windows, Atlanta was brilliant and vast and going about its Tuesday with the cheerful indifference of a city that does not wait. Somewhere below, in the streets of Midtown, Marcus Hale was walking back to wherever he had come from. She wished him well. She found, to her own quiet surprise, that she meant it. She had not hired him. She had already known, before the interview began, that she would not because of what he had done, but because leadership at Osei Tech required a kind of trust she was not able to extend to him and would not pretend otherwise. She had given him the interview because she believed in fair process. She had given him 50 minutes of her full professional attention because that was who she was, and she had not let what he did make her someone different. She had given him the truth at the end because he had earned it, not by what he'd done 10 years ago, but by what he'd done in that room today, by showing up honestly, by not pretending, by saying the thing that cost him something. That was enough. It was not forgiveness exactly. It was something more useful than forgiveness. It was the acknowledgement that people are capable of growth even when it arrives too late to change anything that matters. She gathered her things. She had a 1 o'clock lunch with her mother at Bacchanalia on Peachtree. She had a 3 o'clock board call. She had a company of 112 people who were building something real. She had a life that fit her exactly. She took the elevator down and walked through the lobby of her building. The building with her company on the 22nd floor and her name on the lease. And she pushed through the glass doors into the October Atlanta sunshine, warm and golden and entirely unhurried. And she did not look back. She never had. My wonderful friends, Victoria never chased him. She never begged. She never explained herself to people who were not ready to understand her. She simply kept building. And one Tuesday morning in October, 10 years later, he walked through her door to ask for a job. Real power is not loud. It does not announce itself. It simply keeps showing up, doing the work, becoming the thing that cannot be ignored. What did you think of Victoria? Was she right to give him the interview? Or would you have done something different? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to hear from you. If this story moved you, subscribe to Empire Stories right now. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that what they are building in silence will one day speak for itself. A new story is coming very soon. You will not want to miss it. Thank you so much.